Thank you, everyone. My story's called Homecoming. And you'll have to use your imagination, but I'll try. The day was warm. It was the perfect spring day in Brown County. The sun was perfectly blue. The sun was out and shining bright. And my husband, Dell, and I were standing by our automobile up on the top of what's called Kelly Hill, which is Road 46, going into Nashville from Bloomington. There's a pullout, a gravel pullout, and we were standing there and looking to the southeast to Brown County State Park. And before us was the most beautiful vista. It was like a landscape painting. The pink dogwoods were in full bloom. The dogwoods were white, and they were like lace necklaces wandering around through all these trees, thousands of green trees. It was a beautiful painting. And we were standing there looking from one end of the vista to the other, looking at this beautiful scene and not saying a word. We were just standing there looking back and forth. And suddenly we turned to each other and we stared at each other for a while. And without a word, we got back into the car and went on our trip. That was a moment when I realized that we had made the most scary decision probably in our whole lives. We had made the decision without saying a word to each other until much later that we had decided to leave a comfortable home, true friends, a wonderful city out on the western edge of Missouri, and we were going to move back to Indiana. The word was homecoming in a way, but it wasn't something that is like a Hollywood aha and violins playing in the background. This had a long background, but it came up during that beautiful day and became reality for us. As I said, we had a comfortable home in Missouri, loads of friends. Our children were raised in the same town. We knew everybody. So why would we move from this comfortable spot? Well, one of the reasons was that we were lacking arts and culture. And it wasn't a sudden thing that we realized, but it had been growing for a long time. To go to a concert was 180 miles round trip on a narrow 2-lane highway to Kansas City. And we'd go to places when we traveled. We'd go to museums. We'd check out the city and see, well, is this where we want to live? And our checklist wasn't full. We came back home. And I think the beginning of our quest to find arts and culture in our lives was also because our children were in college, and the dogs and I would wander from one empty bedroom to another. The house was quiet. The phone didn't ring. It was time for a change. And years ago, when I was a student at Indiana University, I was a reporter for the Indiana Daily Student. And as a freshman, I was volunteered by my editor to be the arts editor of everything artistic on campus. Well, I was a freshman and I didn't know what it meant. What it meant was that I covered all kinds of events, not knowing a single thing about Mozart or art. But every night I would rush back to Ernie Pyle Hall and sit at a typewriter. Yes, we had typewriters back then, and pound away until deadline time, my editor yelling over my shoulder, hurry up, get done, it's deadline time. When the semester was up, I realized that I really liked this beat. I was enjoying it very much. So I re-upped once, twice, 3 times. By the time I graduated, I was truly in love with what was possible to do if you just quieted your nerves and went and did it. And in the meantime, Del, who was studying for his graduate degree, would take breaks in recital hall and go listen to a music performance before going back to Franklin Hall, where that was our main library back then, to the graduate carols. Time went on, and finally, a decision came that we really were going to move. That's when the feeling in my stomach started, this pit or this weight. Are we making the right decision? Is this what we should do? The kids would call from college and say, Mom, why aren't you going to go to an ocean coast or a big city? Why are you going to plain old Indiana? I couldn't answer them. I just stuttered. Well, at our going away party, all our friends were there. It was a beautiful evening. They'd come up and say, well, we're really going to miss you after all these years. I'm sure you've checked this out, but, and then their voices would drop away. I went home that night and brushing my teeth, I just started to cry. I thought, we've made the worst mistake in our whole life. And I cried and cried and cried. And I'm sure that until moving day came, I had so many doubts. One day I found myself walking out in cold weather in aimless circles around my driveway. I was still puzzled about what we were doing and not yet sure. Well, moving day came. And you know, I don't have a single memory of that moving van coming down that gravel lane in Brown County and unloading our furniture. Have you ever had an operation or procedure where finally the nurse comes up to you and said, wake up, you did fine? That's how I felt. I didn't have a memory of it. And I was so lonely. We decided to live in a place that was surrounded by zillions of trees. I couldn't even see my neighbor's house. There was nothing there but green. And it was so boring that the dogs decided to sit on the porch, at the porch window, and wait for the crunch of gravel when my husband came home from work. And I listened and listened. Someone to talk to besides the dogs. So one day, I decided to wander downtown to Nashville and go in an art gallery. Someone had told me about it. I read about it in the paper. Well, that was a revelation because that friendly manager took me around and showed me all this beautiful Brown County art hanging on the walls. And then she invited us to come to a reception, an opening of a new show on the weekend. Well, I thought, I'll be a wallflower. I can't go up and meet these people. I don't know anybody. Instead, people came and introduced themselves and said, hey, I think you're the new people in town. Can you imagine there's 843 people in Nashville? Anyway, it was a beautiful evening, meeting new people, and realizing that we're not alone in the world. And then something else happened. I decided, my new bravery, to go over to Indiana University and revisit the campus. But now I went to the Indiana University Art Museum. I walked in. By the way, when I was in school so long ago, there wasn't an art museum here. It was an empty space. The Fine Arts building was under construction, but we had no art building on campus. It was a revelation to walk into those 3 stories full of art, spanning centuries and centuries, statues, drawings, oil paintings. I was in 7th heaven by the time the afternoon ended. I wandered through the Fine Arts building to see what it looked like. And on the wall were masses of notes and posters and bulletins, lectures, tours, movies, receptions. It was eye-opening. But the best thing was the poster beside all these notes. It was a list of classes for the next semester, dozens of art history classes. I read every line on that poster. And I made a vow to myself that I would go to a class. So I paid the fee, went to class the next semester. I was more nervous than a freshman, which is really saying something. I kept thinking, do I have my pencils? Will I understand what the professor is saying? Can I write fast enough? Well, by the time this class was over, I was on another plane. I was in another planet. It was absolutely wonderful. I couldn't believe how much I enjoyed learning about art, something I couldn't do in school when I was here as a student. I shared that with my husband when he came home. It was so exciting. So then we went to classes a lot. We went to music, religion, all kinds of things. And I ended up taking dozens of art history classes. One day, somehow I learned about a docent class forming at the museum. Once again, I geared up my courage, went to that first meeting. There were lots of people there looking very educated. But by the time that class was over, I had found my calling. I was going to be a docent no matter what. Now it's 15 years, and I'm still a docent. I still sign up for tours. I still have that feeling when children come in the door with their backpacks loaded to the limit and excited, and I think, oh, I can hardly wait to show you what's on the walls and in this building. And I have the same feeling of anticipation when I see these wonderful adults who come in. And in the middle years of their life, they want to learn about art. And it's so wonderful to share it with them. So not long ago, I was with a group of second graders. I think they were second graders. And we docents are taught to keep the children close and don't let them touch the artwork. So we were poised in front of one of the museum's jewels. It's a beautiful oil painting. Someday you have to go and see it. It's a picture of Jesus, and he has his hands up, and he's floating above his tomb, and his robes are floating around him, and the Heavenly Father is up there gesturing, "Come to me." But we don't say that to the children. We say, "Well, what do you see in this picture?" A little bit of silence, and all of a sudden a little boy raises his hand, and he said, "Well, I don't know what's going on, but that guy is in a lot of trouble." Now you know why docents smile a lot. But I smiled, and I smiled, and I smiled. Thank you very much.